Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Feingold, and I'm a co-founder of The Fourth Floor. The Fourth Floor is a female-focused entrepreneurial ecosystem. We help professionals get board seats, and we help startups build their boards. By connecting these two highly motivated groups of people, we see magic happening, we see careers building, we see companies scaling and rising to the next level. And today, I'm so excited that we are chatting with Cherie Aimée. Did I pronounce your name right, Cherie?
Yes, you did. Perfect.
Okay, part one down. As part of our series, which is called The Upside, these are our conversations that we're having about how a major crisis can reorder society and how we as a community, we can harness that reordering for the better. And I'm so happy to have Cherie here. I'm going to give like a tiny snippet of information about Cherie, but then she really needs to share her story herself in her own words. I will never do it justice, despite the amount of research I've done on you. Cherie is a digital transformational leader, humanitarian, writer, global speaker, and she is exploring the intersection between advanced technology and humanity, and she has been on television or won awards. She's phenomenal. So please, Cherie, tell us your story, please.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. It's such an honor to be here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to come on here. I'm so grateful to be speaking with all of you. Such an amazing, powerful group of women. So yeah, just to tell you a little bit about my story, I was CEO about where are we now? 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago. I was CEO of my own tech startup, and I had a major health tragedy. I flatlined in my husband's arms, and doctors were unable to resuscitate me for over 90 minutes. Overnight, I literally lost everything. It was unknown if I would survive, and I ended up spending about 3 months in the hospital on life support in a coma. And then I ended up spending another 5 years out of the hospital on a bionic heart until I received a heart transplant. While my life was saved, literally everything I knew about myself was shattered. Okay, like everything and how I identified myself was what no longer existed. I lost my business as a result of all of this. I lost my physical mobility. I lost my identity, like I shared. I lost hope. And I lost my ability to dream for my future.
Oh my gosh, Cherie, please tell me what happened next. What are some of the identities that you lost and how did you refine them?
So number one, I was always an overachiever, right? I went to school, I got good grades, I kind of did what I was told, I got the good jobs. I always excelled in everything I did. I was a go-getter, I was an action taker, I was responsible. You know, that's just who I was. I was a natural kind of, I always had the natural entrepreneurial traits, which is why I was so successful as a CEO. But something happens when overnight this tragedy comes in and just flips your world upside down. And it's kind of like everything that you normally associated with yourself, such as the overachieving, the always being successful, things working out, having an amazing team, all those things that like I prided myself on, they disappeared because I could no longer play that role anymore. There was literally several years where I just could not and did not ever know if I would ever be that Cherie again. And the truth is, I never was that Cherie again. But thank heavens. Thank heavens, because what this tragedy that I used to call it, but now I look at it as a blessing. But what this incident taught me is that whoever I was before this tragedy did not leave me. It was a skill that was innate in me. I was innately a multitasker. I was innately a creative person. I was innately a problem solver. That didn't change. What did change were the physical structures and circumstances of my life. But Cherie, me, I was still the same. And so what ended up happening was I had to get really, really clear on who was I at my core without the business? Who was I at the core without everybody coming to Cherie for all the tech needs, for all the, help me get through life needs, right? Because at that time I needed to focus on myself. And when you're somebody that's either a people pleaser or you're somebody that's always someone people can count on and they always look to for leadership and guidance, this was my identity. And so I had to use this time of quiet, this pause in my life to really get to know who I was, not just all over again, but on a deeper level. Because what I did know was I still had value to offer the world. Now, that knowing didn't happen overnight. I had my days of, and sometimes months of tears of saying, how am I going to get through this? I have nothing to offer the world anymore. There were even thoughts of I screwed up by getting sick. Can you imagine? I screwed up.
Wow.
I didn't, right? I didn't plan right. And the truth is, I did plan right. And I did do everything I could do. But I had to kind of forgive myself for where I was at.
Right.
That life had thrown me a curveball, and it was really important for me to turn off the outside world, turn off all the noise, go within and say, where am I at right now? Because all I have is this moment, and I'm not quite sure how to get through it, but I need to dig deep into my soul and remember who I am, and that the answers would come to me if I sat still. And in that time of solitude, isolation, right? Sound familiar?
It does.
In that time of isolation, I had the opportunity to get really creative. So if I couldn't walk anymore, if I couldn't sit at a computer anymore and lead a team, what were some other ways that I could bring value to the world? It was as simple as, okay, I lost a whole firm, right? Lost the team, 20-person team, like successful, big money clients, all of it gone. So if I were to start over, what are the ways that Cherie, me as a person, what are some ways I can continue to bring value to others? That's a very hard step to take in the midst of tragedy, but it is the light through the darkness, because I learned that in giving to others, it allowed me to actually get to know myself on a deeper, more powerful way. And in that time, I didn't just learn how powerful I was able to convert that into actual accomplishments, actual tangible results. So I'm not just talking like in this woo-woo, like let me just tap in and get to know myself and then all is well, right? We do live in a physical world, and I understand that because I was a CEO. And I'm not the type of person to just sit around and not do anything. I had to figure out what was my value and what are ways I could bring value to myself and others. And in that time, I started sharing my story of resilience, right? And that was before I had accomplished anything. It was just like, you know what? I survived. Can I at least tell you that story of how I got through life support and coma? You know, like I know I used to be like this big shot tech person, but I'm sorry, all I have right now is my heart. So let me at least share with you, business owners, how I got through life support, and maybe you can relate it somehow to what's going on in your life. That's all I had to give.
That's a pretty big thing to give, though, because it's really your health and yourself, and
Mm,
it's you down to the core rather than these, like, I don't know, these more frivolous things of the work that you do, right? That,
absolutely.
and to give that to other people, I think is just such a beautiful, and like, it's a core part of your being. And so thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And it really is, because I think in our day to day, and even looking back at my experience in running my business, but even the days I was a programmer in technology companies and advertising firms, I really did learn that um, we forget in the busyness of life, you know, we forget how to take care of ourselves, and we also forget how to take care of other people because we're so worried about those bottom line themes of work. And how can you blame us? We were raised that way. That's how most businesses are. And if you want to succeed, let alone succeed as a woman in business, you know, we've had to fit ourselves into a structure that wasn't meant for women specifically to really thrive on all fronts, you know. And I'm saying this from somebody that for almost 20 years I've been very blessed in to be one of a few women in technology. I mean, this is back, we're talking back before it was cool to be, you know, in tech. You know, you were just like the complete geek nerd, you know, it wasn't cool. And
It was one time not cool to be in tech. No one told me that. I thought I was always cool.
right? I mean, I always felt cool,
Yeah, I'm sure
but
you were always cool, Cherie. Like, I can't even. So thinking about, like, listen, we're all in a state of, maybe we're getting past the shock, but we're all in a state of transformation right now. Definitely not to the level of transformation that you found yourself at many years ago. But
yeah.
like, talk to me about like the rebirth of female founders and what this time can mean for our communities.
I think it's so important, you know, it's so important for more and more women to show up and and even holding positions on boards, getting in those companies, and also not just getting in, but having your voice be heard and having the ability to have decision-making power, and you know, similar to what we talked about earlier, is having equity in these companies. You know, we sure work hard enough and we deserve it, right? And I do believe that many of the reasons that we are in the position that we are right now, which you can clearly look around and see that with the slightest little wind blowing, the entire economy just collapsed. I mean, like, if that's not a wake up call to how our entire way of living has been on a foundation of toothpicks,
Right.
you know,
I
I
mean,
mean,
did we die for 90 minutes like you did? Is that what happened?
you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys all kind of feel like that, because for me, after what I've been through, I kind of saw what happened, and I was like, wow, it's here. Like, I've been talking about this and sharing about this and sharing about the need for the feminine essence to come up and kind of meet that masculine energy, that masculine presence of structure that has built everything, our financial systems, our supply chains, like all these really old, antiquated industries. They were built with so much of that masculine energy without that feminine balance. And I know I'm kind of talking masculine and feminine energies, and I apologize if you guys aren't used to hearing that type of language, but that is what we bring as women. We bring a certain essence. I'm talking about an essence that is natural to us. We raise children, we give birth to life. We as a whole are very connected to nature and nurturing and caring for our people, right? Our family, our kids, the world. We have that in us, our ability to be compassionate, but we've had to stifle that a little bit. And I want to preface this by saying, even I didn't want to admit that when I was go, successful, fitting right in with all the males and doing my thing, watching the bank checks, rolling in. I was like, oh no, I'm just a female in this space. Like, but meanwhile, it was breaking down parts of who I was. It was forming me, or it was making me put work and other priorities ahead of my own health and my natural rhythms as a woman that allow me to thrive in all aspects of my life. We have actually had to sacrifice, right? We talk a lot about the things we've had to sacrifice as women, whether we have children or not. We've had to sacrifice parts of ourselves to succeed. And my experience, it took a while, but over time, and especially coming back into blockchain and more of the emerging technologies now, it's more in my face now because I'm so different. Like, I refuse to give up what allowed me to thrive after a near-death experience. So yeah.
What I love about your story too is that you started your story by talking about your experience and that you needed to speak up, even though you felt like you didn't have much to contribute in a different way. You had something to contribute. So how, as women in this time, how would you suggest that we all speak up, find our voices as founders to add value?
I definitely think for me, what's really helped me tap deeper into this expression of truth has been really surrounding myself by other powerful women that are in agreement that this is where we're going and this is the type of leadership that we want to take a stand for, because it's very scary to do it alone. It's possible. I've done a lot of it alone, but then I realized that it got to be too much for me. And there were moments where I just felt like I wanted to pull back. And I would say to myself, maybe I'm not supposed to be in this space.
So
Right.
it sounds like community is really important to you. How can we bring community together when we're so far apart in today's age or time?
Yeah, I mean, that's the benefit of technology, right? So right now, we may not have the physical ability to really get together in person, which is so unfortunate. But similar to how I reinvented myself and, grew a very big brand presence for myself, and then was able to meet more women, meet people like all of you. I did it through technology. I did it just through live streaming, Zoom calls. I mean, it's taken me years to really get back to even just the mobility, the being able to walk and travel, and it's no different, right? So maybe maybe you don't find yourself in the same position physically, but isolation is a physical result of what's happening now. And there's so many technology platforms. We're on Zoom right now. This is a great place to not just meet about business, but how about connecting with your fellow women and saying, how are you? Like, let's just have lunch today. Like, do you want to have lunch with me today over Zoom? Checking in and just being like, look, I see what you're doing online. You're such a powerful force, but I know it's not easy, right? Like, we all know it's not easy. It's not easy to run a business. It's not easy to run a team. It's not easy when you're not making sales or things don't go right. So let's not pretend that because we see, our posts online that we're all doing okay. We are all in this together. And if we are going to make changes, if we are going to ask for more technologies that respect our privacy and have censorship not be a big issue, because how can we bring the truth in if we have all these technology giants that are beginning to censor us? And I'm sure in one way or another, you all have experienced that. That is a result of a very, very masculine dominated industry, tech, finance. Women are communicators. We want to bring people together. We don't want to be censoring the
Right.
truth, right? So it is very important for us to join together in community and say, keep going, Cherie, keep going, Sarah, you're doing great. I'm right there with you. What can I do to help you? We're all in this together. We're all in this together. And the only way as women, we are really going to be able to push past being on a board and still being treated like we're an admin. The only way we're going to be able to push through that is if we stand strong together, not in competition, but in collaboration. And I can tell you this, that it doesn't matter whether you have 20 years experience in business, whether you're new, whether you know nothing about blockchain, whether you know nothing about being a lawyer like Sarah, whether you are the top level CEO, you're brilliant, you've got a team, you're bringing in millions. I promise you, all of us women have something to offer, because not only are we go-getters, we are action takers, we are problem solvers. And if we all were in a room together and tried to figure out some of the solutions going on, we can. And I know Sarah and Kat, you guys know that I worked with some women over the past a month or so since the COVID-19 started spreading to reinvent our supply chain. Like, literally, we did it in under 2 weeks. It's so easy to be like, oh my God, like, let me just fall victim to the masks aren't getting to these hospitals and so much overwhelm. And I try to reroute people with that mental thinking and to just say, let's just put our heads together. I know a little bit about supply chain, but I don't know the manufacturers. I don't know any of that. But what I do know is, guess what? I died. And I happen to know everyone in my hospital because they saved my life. So let me utilize my platform, my media coverage, experience, credibility, and let me see if I can at least connect, whatever we can put together to the hospitals. So that was something that to me felt so little, but look at how we came together. And one person had previous experience with manufacturing companies, not what she does now. Another one was an engineer, and we just figured it out. We figured it out and created a supply chain in under 2 weeks. And it hasn't been easy to get them into these hospitals, but it was such a beautiful opportunity for me to start sharing what is possible with women so quickly if we just work together and not feel like we have to fight for the same positions or fight for, I don't know, like sometimes I get attention that, it's not our fault, it's how these businesses have been structured, where there's one board seat, which woman's gonna get it,
Right.
right?
And the woman who gets it is in a very strange position of being the only. And as someone who has been the only way too many times, when the heat is a little bit hot or someone needs water, I can feel the eyes glaring on me.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
like I'm not your mother. I'm not the secretary.
Right.
I'm the lawyer, and I'm on the board too. So
Yes.
thinking about board seats and community and coming together, I love your story about just getting things done and making things happen. Like, if we can get more women on boards, how do you think that's going to change the overall ecosystem moving forward?
I just think having the ability to have more women being backed in their decisions and their abilities to um, shift the course of some of these companies and some of these decisions that they make that are not in the best interest of people. They're just
Right.
not. They're not even ethical. I mean, I've seen a lot, since coming back, one of the benefits of building such a powerful brand for me has been that I do get requests all the time to be on board seats and to everything from funding,
And how do you make those decisions? Because, a lot of us are in a position, aren't in your position, where people are coming to us asking us to join boards. A lot of us are, really looking to get our first or our just a larger level board seat. Like, how do you make your decisions about what companies you want to join?
I usually, and many of these companies can definitely attest to this, I give them a pretty rigorous process that to go through. I mean, like sometimes months, could be
Do you
6 months.
do you force them in a juggle, evening gown competition? What does that look like?
It really looks like me getting to know their core values and not just what they say from their marketing language, but I have to be able to witness them in their actions and to see that what they're promising me, right? Because a lot of times they already know my brand. They know what I stand for. They know I stand for women. They know I want more women's voices, events. I'm somebody that as soon as I get in a company, I make sure in the hiring process that women are not overlooked. And that's who I am. I mean, people pretty much know exactly who I am when they bring me on board, but I've learned that's not enough. They will still try to sometimes promise me things, and then I don't see it happen. And I'm just strong enough now where if I'm not seeing what I want um, in terms of justice, equality, and ethics and integrity, I have no problem walking away. I mean, I really don't, there are so many businesses out there. There's so many opportunities that you really don't have to get stuck in a company that is not treating you the way you deserve. Though, I mean, you got to stop and look at what you have accomplished in the world.
Right.
It's not worth giving up your ability to speak just to be seen. It's not worth it.
That's that's so beautiful, and that's so right. I mean, listen, we all have seen how fragile everything around us is,
Yes.
and if you're silenced, that's not a good place to be. I want to open this up for questions, but I just want to ask one more really small question to you before
Sure.
I do. You kind of mentioned this a little bit, but tell me like a secret to self-care, especially I think all of us could use a little bit of self-care right now.
Yeah.
So any tips?
Absolutely. So let me sum up. Whenever you're going through any kind of tragedy like this, if you're anything like me, you're going to be like, no, I'm fine. Like, I'm doing fine. But you have to understand, even on the days you're fine, those days does not mean that you skip out on your self-care. And self-care, when I try to share it with other women go-getters and action takers, it does look like making sure you're getting your sleep. And sometimes for us, that may be taking a nap in the middle of the day. I mean, you can do it now, you're home, right?
Be right back.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, that's one thing I really did learn in being forced at home for so many years, having to reinvent myself, is playing around with how does Cherie thrive? How does the new Cherie really access that power and that energy that's going to give her the confidence to speak her voice boldly and loudly and stand her ground for her morals and her values? So I had to learn to be somebody that got quiet, closed her eyes, and said, what does my body need right now in this moment? And it may be right before coming on an interview, you need to lay it out for like, 15 minutes, maybe an hour. Like, there's no judgment when you're taking care of yourself. And that's how I thrive. So my water, you see how much water, I mean, I have to drink many of these a day, right? This is not an option. This comes with me everywhere. I have to rest. I use essential oils that, again, tap into the different senses. Again, that's all part of like, I'm this woman, I'm this feminine essence, I'm this powerhouse. What can I do to really stimulate, my senses to really tap into what makes me come alive? Because that is part of our leadership. It's us getting to understand that part of our leadership is just our essence and not so much the doing. Right. And so again, that's part of the new feminine leadership, because when you can tap in and access that, you will naturally affect more and more people. And when you can affect more and more people, guess what? Your leverage and your ability to generate partnerships and grow your communities and really tap into and empower and enroll other people in your mission to raise funds, to deliver healthcare, deliver greater needs to those who need it. This is about you accessing even more than just your physical skills of being a lawyer and being a tech powerhouse. Like, there's so much more to you, right? Like,
Right.
some of you may paint, some of you may sing. Well, guess what? A part of me right now, because I have such a powerful mission with women, one of my self-care things that I've just taught myself is vocal alchemy. Now, this is something where I lost my voice after being on life support. I used to be a singer as well. I lost my voice from being on life support for so long because I had a trach and everything, right? The other day I said, I'm not going to be afraid of my voice anymore. If I want to be on world stages, if I want to be, on boards of major companies and not be afraid to stand my truth, I need to access all of me, all the parts of me I've been hiding or too ashamed of or afraid of. And one of my creative elements was my voice. Do you know that somehow in the midst of being a successful businesswoman, I stopped singing?
Oh no, you have to keep your passion alive. I'm so glad you're singing again.
You have to. And so there's a thing I do now, even before I get on client calls, before I do interviews, and I do my vocal alchemy, and it does something to me. It activates me and reminds me who I am. I want all of you to remember who you are. That is the embodied feminine leader of the future. Humanity is relying on it. The planet is relying on it. This is our opportunity. It is not going to be easy at all. At all.
It isn't easy.
Right?
That's such great advice. I would love to open it up for some questions from our audience. I see the chat is a bunch of chats. I don't know if there's a question in there. If you want to either raise your hand or put one of those little hands up, I can call on someone if they have a question.
Ooh, lots of writing. Yes.
Oh
Wow. Thank you guys. Let's see.
my God. Breen or Kat, have you read any of the questions? Is there a question?
Yeah, it's been more of a chat rather than questions. Right. So it's really great because we're getting to know each other, and Cherie, you're like spurring on these great conversations because what you're doing is amazing. What you're talking about is touching all of us and what we need more of, just in our lives in general. So it's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say too that I love what you guys are doing with the fourth floor. I mean, this is just a beautiful opportunity. I'm so glad we found each other because what you've created here is absolutely an amazing, safe container for women like us to come to the table and showcase what we're going through, you know, and see how we can help one another get ahead together. And that's so critical.
You know, this is Breen Sullivan, and first off, thank you so much. I've enjoyed every word that you have said. Has been fabulous, really inspirational and really reaffirming. And I guess so, you know, so one thing. So obviously, this is what the fourth floor, what we are trying to do, what we're all about, and you know, part of why we focused on this idea of the upside, you know, just where is not just where is the silver lining, but also like how can we use this to galvanize, you know, to move forward, to change things. And so, you know, you're talking about how, you know, in a sense, it's like we've all sort of, you know, died, or like we're all going through this transformation. And that does get me so excited because, you know, so many of the old patterns, like the queen bee syndrome, which people were chatting about here in the messages, you know, that that is a problem, right? Like that can't be the future. And I've seen so many articles that have been circulated recently about how now there's this big crisis. There's going to be a recession. What happens in a recession? Well, it's really bad for women because in a recession, you know, everyone's conservative and they're driven by fear. And so they retract back into those old patterns, which means our voice is silenced, you know, we get less. But actually the pendulum needs to swing in the opposite direction. I mean, and that's what you're saying. Like we need to, you know, how, and so it's funny because my big question for you was like, so how do we do this, right? How do we galvanize this crisis to move the needle? And I feel like you're giving a great answer, you know, if I heard you right, which is community, right? It's us, not queen bee, but us lifting each other up, that, you know, that then we can start to change the balance of power, which I think you're right, it's necessary, right? I mean, this is necessary right now.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, like, we have to understand that this is also kind of new for women, right? Like it's just, we've had to fight for so long just to be acknowledged, like for our gifts and for the contributions we've given businesses in the world. You know, we've had to fight for that acknowledgement. We're still fighting for that acknowledgement. And so one of the things that we really have to understand too is that for some of us women, it is not comfortable coming into community and trusting one another. Mm-hmm. And I think if we just acknowledge that part, it allows us to respect where we all are at this time. And it allows us to get comfortable first being in a room filled with all women. I mean, most of my life, I've been the only female on my team. Like, I was the only female, you know, programmer. So it took me a while to even get used to working with women and trusting them. And to even admit that was hard for me. You know, like nobody wants to admit that, like, they don't trust their fellow women or they're afraid based on, you know, an experience that happened in the past. Like, even while we're here talking about how we're going to build a new future together, let's talk about some of those issues. Like, that's a major topic that all women's group, I feel, should really address. Like, let's break down what are some things that may cause you to not want to contribute or not want to come together in community. Because I guarantee you, if we address that, more women will come to the table because they know you're not just expecting them to join in on maybe like a clique. that maybe they don't fit in on, right? So the thing with women, very similar to what I said before, is we want all types of women to come to the table, to come together, right? So we're all maybe go-getters, we all are problem solvers, but we have different backgrounds. And so how can we all come to the table? How can I come to the table without somebody else feeling intimidated by what I know? Because I know that they know something that's going to help me that I don't know about, right? So even with community, it's more than just teaching the strategies, the how to, like, let's do this. It's also about how can we build that culture of trust, the culture of trust, right?
That is so true. And I think we all need to build a culture of trust and really support each other and not feel intimidated by each other, think that it's competition. And if we feel that way, we just need to have some open communication because we need to help each other out. I want to be cognizant of the time, and I see a bunch of questions and hands raised. So the first person I think that raised their hand was Cricket. Did you have a question for Cherie?
Yes. Hi, Cherie. This is great. I really am appreciating what you're saying today. And I am in a very male-dominated industry, the fashion industry, and I've had a lot of issues because I don't really fit the pictures from one standpoint. But I think that it's interesting to take on a new paradigm like I'm doing. So I love that thought you're talking about, and in the whole scope of the way what's happening right now with the whole pandemic. And, I question some of the underlying media exposures of things. I just, I'm like an old hippie, right? So I've been checking things out for a long time. So, how do we approach that? Like, do you have any thoughts about that? That's my first thing. And then I think my second thing was the whole, I guess, just holding hands. Like, how would we really make a difference in the face of the political and the military environment that we're in right now? How could we really, when we're not allowed to expose our feelings, everything's like monitored and so forth from my perspective.
Right. Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts about all of that and how we can affect change?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it is important to figure out how to navigate that, because that is part of our future, right? I think I talked about it. I'm not sure if it was before or after we started recording, but I talked a little bit about the censorship that's coming up, and it's getting much worse. Okay. This is just the beginning of the censorship. It's going to really be extremely obvious if it isn't already. That's one of the benefits of being in tech, is I get to see things and what's happening way ahead of, the masses. So that is a big issue. And it really comes down to, again, the community, right? So where you're going to see that affecting is it's going to change the way we're able to market, express our truth on platforms, and talk about issues that are very, very real, that are affecting our clients, our team members. So there's a lot of that happening. What can we do about it? Number one, that's where the community is step one, okay? Because we can't change the system overnight, right? That's where this is part of like my mission. I am not interested right now in building a $1 billion company anymore, $1 billion tech company anymore, like my goals were prior to my death, right? But I understand what it's like to be a woman in these fields. I have an inspirational story, and I'm not afraid of expressing my truth, clearly. And so my contribution is to help all of us open up with some of these really, really big issues, okay? Because I don't have an issue getting people together and using my gift to allow people to open up to what they're really feeling, because we're not gonna be able to make a difference until we really are able to each individually tap into how this is affecting us. And I got to tell you that censorship is affecting me big time. Okay. So if it's affecting me, it's affecting you. It's got to be affecting other women here. So number one, in the community, that is a topic that we need to talk about, because that is not just something that's happening right now. I can tell you that is something that is literally showing you what is coming for the next 10 years. All right, this is a big issue. And again, this is why it's going to be so important for women to come together, problem solve, brainstorm, and figure out, what do we do about this? Like, this is not something you or I can ignore in the name of, I need to get more clients, so let me just focus on my marketing. It's something you won't be able to get away from, because what's happening in the world and where we're going technology-wise, digital transformation-wise, is going to affect your team, you, your family, and all of your clients. So your clients are going to be coming to you with the same issues, right? So here in community is our opportunity to say, to be honest and say, this is what's happening. How's it affecting me? How's it affecting my team? And how is it affecting my clients and the people around me? And this is the work that we have to come together and put our brains together and say, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And there may be a few years where we are underground in community trying to figure this out, right?
Wow.
None of us have the answers, but what I can share with you that I do know what's coming. This is not a temporary thing, and that is very hard to share because it's not positive. It's not, it doesn't sound very hopeful, but if there's, yeah.
When you say censorship, are you talking about deleted emails? Are you talking about phone calls? I know they're listening to everything we say or whatever. Is that what you're talking about? Or what are you talking about censorship as far as how it relates to our businesses?
So you're going to start seeing it in your marketing. You're going to start, like, you're going to have, you may have, if you say the wrong thing, you may have your videos deleted.
Yeah.
You may have your platform removed, right? These are very, very real issues that if your platform was removed and that affects your business, what is it going to make you do? It's going to make you stay silent again. And then we're back to square one.
And I think we could have an entire conversation about AI and what's happening with AI. I want to be cognizant of our time. I'd love to just take one more question. I'm going to mispronounce your name. Is it Caroline Jean?
Hi, it's Caroline.
Caroline, what is your question for Cherie? And this will be our last question.
Awesome. So I'll make it count. I just wanted to iterate that it's so good to see you again, Cherie.
Yes.
I met you actually 2 years ago at the Women's Conference at Brown.
Brown, I remember.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, of course.
I remember you told me, we connected on LinkedIn afterwards, you told me that, you know, my greatest strength was going to be what people had always thought was my weakness, and that, you know, my young adulthood would be finding my superpower. So
yes,
I still hold on to that, but that's for another time. So I guess for me, I really like the fact that you mentioned in this talk how you were able to redesign a whole supply chain in the middle of a crisis. And I think for me, I'm just curious, as a person who's also a business owner and is really trying to radically think about how to equitize my supply chain within the beauty industry, what design thinking processes or resource tools did you use when mapping out your supply chain?
Yeah,
anything that you can mention?
Yeah, absolutely. What a great question. And it's so great to see you again. Thank you for jumping on. It's, I remember meeting you like it was yesterday, really.
Literally.
Yes, and I'm so glad you remembered me sharing that with you. It really is, right? And that's
Yeah, I put it in my journals.
and that's why I just want to point out that that's why so many women have this imposter syndrome, right? Because what we think maybe our weakness is actually our biggest strength, and that's why we're so afraid to share it. And so again, that we can talk about that another time, but it's such a powerful thing that you shared. So thank you. In terms of the supply chain, so the reason it was able to be implemented so fast is because a part of my network introduced me to a Slack channel that went up very shortly once the need was obvious. And in a matter of days, about 34,000 engineers, doctors, and people like me just jumped in to be like, how can we help? Like, so can you imagine 34,000 people on a Slack channel? And out of that craziness and people just posting all over the place, I was able to connect with different people handling different regions. And then from there, I was able to, connect with some of the manufacturers. From there, we had designers in there. And again, when we have the technology company, I'll talk more about what open source technology allows you to do, but that's what we use. We use open source technology, basically community, open source, and collaboration. And that's how you find what you need. And that's how you change the world.
Thank you so much. That was
Thank
such a great question. We are out of time, and that was such a great question. And I love that that you came together again. My heart is really warm, and I hope your heart is doing well, Cherie, like literally and figuratively. I hope.
This has been such a treat. Thank you all for
Thank
showing
you.
up. I've
And
recognized many names, actually.
And thanks so much for joining us. If you have questions about the fourth floor, go to our website, thefourthfloor.co, and we have events all the time. We have a newsletter, we have a directory, because we are a community, just like what Cherie was talking about, and we're coming together to really rise up careers and companies of women. So thank you so much for coming, and have a great day. And this has been The Upside with the Fourth Floor. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Kat.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.